If you're looking for a great Valentine's night dinner, then look no further than this delicious French chicken stew. Coq au vin is chicken stew braised in red wine, and it's perfect for me for something as romantic as Valentine's night dinner. Now watch till the end to see what you can do to easily impress your loved one, and make sure you don't skip around or you may miss an important step guaranteed to the success of this dish. Let's get cooking. The full recipe and the ingredients will be on my website, and don't forget to check out Instagram for behind the scenes and to get a sneak peek on what I'm working on right now. So for me, I'll be using a Merlot wine today, and I'll add my chicken pieces into this large bowl for marination. So I have my bone-in chicken thighs and drumsticks, and now to this add in all of that bottle of wine. Submerge the chicken completely under that wine, and we want to add in some bay leaf, a couple of sprigs of thyme, and then some peeled pearl onions. Now ideally we want to marinate this overnight, but you can get away with about 12 hours as well. Now while that's marinating, let me know in the comments down below if you are staying in for Valentine's Day or are you going out. Now here's the bacon that I'm using. I got this from the butcher, and you want to get a nice thick slab so you can cut into some thick lardons. Now if for any reason you cannot find a thick slab of bacon like this, or pancetta that's already cubed up, or if you can't find salted pork, then you might have to resort to using strips of bacon. And while you technically can use it, because there'll be smaller bits and you can't get those nice meaty chunks, it's going to affect the texture, the consistency of that gravy, and it won't be as smooth because those bits of bacon is really going to take away from that beautiful stew. Now these chunks might look too big for you, but as you can notice, most of that is fat, and that's going to render out. We're going to use that fat to cook our chicken, our veggies, and this is going to shrink by about a half, and it's going to help add that beautiful meatiness into this coq au vin stew. Now toss the bacon into a cold pot and then turn the heat on to medium. We let that fat render out slowly and let these bacon bits become nice and crispy. That's going to take some time, 15-20 minutes. In the meanwhile, prep up your cremini mushrooms. If they're super big, cut them in quarters. If they're small, cut them in half. Now you also want to take out your marinated pearl onions and then set them aside, and at the same time start taking out your chicken as well. You can really see how well it has taken on the color of that wine, and you can see how well it is marinated. Now we're gonna pat these guys dry to get them ready for a nice sear. It's gonna be hard to get a nice color if it is moist, full of that wine. So once you've dried this all up and the bacon has a rich golden brown color and crisp just like this, then take the bacon out, let any excess fat drain out, because we'll be using all that rendered fat to prepare the rest of our coq au vin. So now toss in those marinated pearl onions, and you want to give this a nice saute, a nice hard sear. Now for these brown bits, if at any point you start seeing that it's turning black, then add in a splash of the wine you're using or a splash of brandy and just deglaze that pan. Once your onions have some color, start adding in your chicken pieces, skin side down for the thighs, and try to get as much color as you can on these chicken pieces. You want to make sure you turn it and get some even color as well as you can on each side. And at this point the onions are pretty much done, so feel free to just move those onions over the chicken to protect them from burning while you get those chickens some nice color. And keep in mind that the chicken will be releasing its own water, so keep the high on medium to medium high just to get that beautiful color. We're not cooking the chicken all the way right now, just giving it some color on the outside. So once it has colored evenly on each side, take it all out, and now we'll start prepping up our mushrooms. So add all of your mushrooms in that pot along with a tablespoon or two of butter, and then just start stirring and sauteing with those onions. Again, if at any point you find that those brown bits are turning black, splash with some brandy or the wine you're using and continue to saute and get those brown bits out. Just look at how beautiful those mushrooms are looking. golden brown, releasing its own moisture. And you can see that we're doing this all one pot. We're having and saving all of that beautiful flavor in that one pot. Make sure you season with salt and pepper and then transfer the chicken back in there along with your bacon bits, some minced garlic, and then pour in all of that reserved marinade that we used to flavor that chicken. Now to help with that gravy, we'll also use some broth. And I'm using some beef broth that I got from the local butcher, which is most likely will be the best alternative to homemade broth. I would stick away from anything from Campbell's or anything that's boxed at the grocery store, and especially away from bouillon. Get the most delicious and organic, freshest broth you can find to make this dinner even more special. Make sure you give this a good stir, and then we're going to add in some generous amount of tomato paste. Again, some more flavor. Now you can always add this at an earlier step when you were sauteing the mushrooms and onions and give this a saute as well. But the tomato paste is essentially cooked in the process that it takes to make it. So that's completely up to you. Now we'll bring this up to a simmer and then cover this with a lid. So let's transfer this into the oven and let this cook for at least an hour to hour 30 minutes. To reduce this now, you can either just leave it on the stove on low heat and reduce it to the consistency that you want. If you want more sauce, don't reduce it too much. If you want it to be super thick, super rich, then reduce it as long as you wish. This is one of those dishes that the longer you cook it, the more delicious it gets. Now you can either do this on the stove, as I said, or in the oven. I find in the oven, it's just more even. Oven preheating at 350 is perfect to reduce this. So in a bowl here, I'm gonna add in my flour, some olive oil, and then some softened butter as well. Use a whisk and bring this all together, and you might need to use a spatula just to make it into this thick paste. We'll be using this to thicken that gravy that's simmering in that oven. Now to thicken that coq au vin, you can do one of two things. If you know everybody at your dinner or lunch is going to eat flour, they eat gluten, then you can just add some flour when we add the chicken into the pot with the mushrooms and onions before any liquid. Just saute the flour with that chicken and then add in your liquids. But if you're not sure, or if you know that there's somebody who does not eat gluten, then in that case, you might want to use cornstarch. And you don't want to put cornstarch earlier. The longer the cornstarch cooks with a sauce, the weirder and the more unpleasant the texture of the sauce becomes. So you only want to add a cornstarch slurry towards the end of the cooking process. And to make this recipe gluten friendly, and if you're not sure who in your guest list is going to be eating the coq au vin, then you can always add a flour, butter and olive oil paste towards the end, or cornstarch as you need. After about an hour or so, that aroma is truly going to be next level. Add about a teaspoon size of that flour paste and then use a whisk to mix that in. Careful not to strike any of the meat pieces and use only the liquid to make sure that the meat does not fall apart. At this point, it's going to be tender and so soft. If you want, you can also take the meat out, whisk the flour paste in, and then add the meat back in, whatever you prefer. I'm just going to finish simmering that coq au vin on my stove while I prep my tagliatelle to serve as a side dish. Now, something as rich as a coq au vin stew needs some starch to cut through that richness. That's why I'm using some simple tagliatelle pasta for my side dish, but you can use some potatoes, some mashed potatoes. It's gonna be perfect with this, and I'll link my recipe down below. You can reduce this as much as you want, depending on the consistency that you want. Those noodles are looking just perfect, al dente to the tooth. Drain them, transfer it back to the pot, add in some butter. We don't want to overdo the pasta. We'll keep that simple, and we want that coq au vin to be the star. Also add in some pieces of tarragon if you want, basil, or some of the thyme that you've already bought if you're not using dried herbs. You can see how easily this restaurant quality, this classic French dish of coq au vin has come together, and even you can make this so easily to make the ultimate romantic dinner. Personally, I've been waiting for a couple of years at least to even attempt this dish, and I've always thought that it's this classic French dish. It's going to be hard, it's going to be complicated, but when you actually do it, when you attempt it, and when you see that result on your plate, in your mouth, it is just incredible. And I want all of you to try this French classic. Serve with some bread, some more noodles, and your night is set. Just look at how tender that is. Fork tender. It just comes right off the bone. And what more do I have to say? Go ahead and subscribe, hit the bell icon, make these foods right in your own kitchen, and share this recipe with somebody who's looking to make something special for Valentine's Day. And if you want a nice dessert, I would recommend my espresso brownies. And for another rich chicken dish, try out my Indian style bolognese sauce. It's delicious. I'll see you in the next one. Bye guys.